Hi, my name is Sarah Kalmeta, and this is my story.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest at this time is Sarah Kalmeta, and she is all the way from Hong Kong joining us at the WEA project. This interview is going to cover a lot of her background and information that she's going to share with us to inspire the ladies. And I understand, Sarah, you're also the head of the SBUS Discovery chapter. Am I right?
That's correct, yes.
Hi, Sarah. So even though you are already such a celebrity in the industry, please say a little bit about yourself and your background to those who may not know you, especially the young readers who you are going to inspire.
Thank you, Brandon. Well, I wouldn't really consider myself a celebrity, but let's go back all the way to when I was very young. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a little girl. I'm even
Oh,
wearing my NASA shirt today, if you can see in the video.
aha,
Um,
yes.
I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I had aspirations of flight. And that was from a very, very young age. My first two words were actually for star and airplane. So I knew I wanted to be doing something with aviation from a very young time. And then
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to an aeronautical school in Arizona, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And I studied a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Business Administration. I
I
also
see.
got a minor in Asian Studies, which is how I found myself here in Hong
In
Kong
Hong
and
Kong.
yes, and in Asia for the last 10 years. So it's been quite the
Ah,
journey.
I see.
I when I went to school, I thought about what did I want to do with my life? And while I loved aviation and while I loved to fly, I realized that the lifestyle of being a pilot was not really what I wanted. So I
Mm-hmm.
started to think about what are the other options that exist.
I see.
And I looked at engineering, I looked at the computer science type degrees,
Mm-hmm.
and in the end, I settled on the degree that I chose because I realized it was also a business degree and it
I
would
see.
enable me to pivot if I ever needed to. And so that's very salient. And so that my current company's name that I founded earlier this year is called Pivot Point. And I work with students, individuals, and corporations to help them through times of change.
I see.
And my background in aviation has been varied, but all in the private jet, the corporate jet sector.
Mm.
Been very lucky to live and work in 4 different countries, working for aircraft management companies, trip support providers, and then, as you mentioned, the head of ASBA Discovery. So the Asian Business Aviation Association's Next Generation of Talent Development Program is called
Mm-hmm.
ASBA Discovery. And this
Mm.
program I took over in 2017. And since then, we've been expanding the program, growing from just one event at A-Base, biggest show in Asia every year, to
Mm-hmm.
different events all the way from secondary school age to postgraduate. And through
Mm-hmm.
this work over the last 3 years, I realized how much I really enjoy working with youngsters and with students, and how much it really gives me energy to see that passion in the next generation and to help cultivate that for the future. And so that's also what led me to develop Pivot Point so that I could do a little bit more in that space this year.
Mm. Likewise, the WEA project is actually with the same view. We are looking into the same as you, and hopefully we can inspire more.
Yes.
What makes you choose Hong Kong, and how often do you really fly?
Well, in 2020, I haven't flown since March. So
Yeah.
I have not been flying. Hong
Hmm.
Kong, if you mean flying as being a pilot, or do you mean just flying in general?
Flying in general,
Okay.
being
I
on
was going
in
to say
aircraft.
the last time I've done any pilot training has been when I was in university. So that's already been
Uh,
quite some time,
mhm,
unfortunately. But since my career in aviation, I've actually traveled quite a lot,
ah,
particularly since I've been in Asia, and I
mhm,
have held a regional role in my last corporate job, and so I was looking after Hong Kong, Singapore, China, Thailand, the Philippines, the Maldives, Japan,
wow.
Australia, and so this required me to be mobile and to move around. So actually in 2017 and 2018, I was traveling up to 90% of the time, which was a little
My.
bit too much for me. I was living out of the suitcase, but
Hmm.
it was still fun and I really loved it, but it's not sustainable to travel that much. Then in
Hmm.
2019, that went down to about 70% of the time. but it enabled me to really build up my communication skills in business, to increase my emotional empathy and my cultural understanding. And, the more you travel and get exposure to different things, the more you learn and the more you're open to opportunity and change.
I see. But there are so many other aspects, like for example, it could have been avionics, or like you said, you could have
Right.
been an astronaut, with
Yes.
NASA or something. But there must be something that triggered you to really love what you're doing right now.
So the ASPA Discovery Program, working with students, is really what cultivated and planted that
Mm,
seed for Pivot Point. And so what I do now is I work with individuals going through times of change. So
I
what does
see.
that mean? That might mean you're a student about to graduate for your first time job and you need assistance with interview prep or how to build your CV or how to
I
network or improve public speaking skills. It might be with someone who's already been working for several years, but they're now in their first manager role and they're really struggling with that change. Or
see.
perhaps it's someone who's mid-career that is feeling stuck, they're a bit bored, they're not sure what to do. Or in the case of aviation, perhaps their job no longer exists for the time being.
I
And so they
see.
need help to pivot into a new area.
Yeah. Would that include transitions from different departments to different roles?
Yes, 100%. So transitioning within the same company, but to a different role,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this company has sent you overseas and now you are a manager of a completely brand new team. So how do you
Correct.
get the buy-in? How do you build trust with them? How to work in a multicultural environment? Not everyone is
Mm-hmm.
as lucky as Hong Kong and Singapore to grow up in an
Mm-hmm.
environment where there's exposure to many cultures in the
That's right.
working space, right? Because as soon as
Yeah.
we fly from Singapore or Hong Kong, we're already in international airspace. A lot of
Yeah.
other countries, like where I come from, the US, you have so many different subcultures within the same country. And even within Europe, you can do the kind of internal flying within the EU and have a
Mm,
little bit more similarity than, what we get exposed to.
that's right. For that matter, perhaps that is why the new air travel bubble has just been created between Singapore and Hong Kong. In the
Yes.
next few weeks, they're going to be engaging this pivot point to start off as well. So now let's talk about you now run your own company, Pivot Point. So what exactly does Pivot Point offer?
Well,
So this
Pivot Point,
mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is just for the new people, just in case they get into aviation, they will not need to understand, how do they get engaged Pivot Point.
Of course. And
Mm-hmm.
Pivot Point is a platform that is not just purely for aviation. It is a coaching and consultancy practice that I founded earlier in the year for anyone that's looking to enhance their career or do something new. But clearly, with
Mm-hmm.
a name like Pivot Point, I can help people pivot into aviation or out of it should they need to find something for a transitionary period while we wait to see the next steps for the aviation industry. Because, of course, we know 2020 has been an extremely tumultuous year, but we also
Mm-hmm.
know that storms don't last forever. And now this is really hard pill to swallow, especially for flight crew right now who have been flying for 20
Yep.
to 30 years. It's really difficult. But for those fresh and starting in their careers, we need to look forward for the long game, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
what are the different things that the industry will need and how do you fill that gap? So Pivot Point is there to help individuals figure out what do they want to be doing and how to live life by using their values as a driving compass to make sure that they're
Mm-hmm.
working and living in a very holistic way and in alignment with who
I
they
see.
are.
Are your services only confined to these, or will you also expand to, let's say, stakeholders? Like for example, investors who need to look into a new area, and regulators and stuff like that, that they might need different point of views.
Of course, so the world is your oyster, as they say. So,
Mm-hmm.
with having your own business, you get to design where it goes, and that can transform and change over time. And so, of course,
Mm-hmm.
right now, it's my business experience has been in the corporate aviation industry. So, of course, it's
Mm-hmm.
natural that I will be lining up with those types of corporations and schools and the aeronautical space. But I do
Mm-hmm.
work with other industries. I've been working more in the wellness, hotel, hospitality group, even insurance firms and banks here in Hong Kong. So
Wow.
with a name like Pivot Point, it allows me to touch other industries, because a lot of what I'm coaching on as well is more of the soft skill development and that
Correct.
attitude towards being agile, towards being able to transform and evolve as the world around us changes.
Captain Nora is with us. She's our brand ambassador. She is also the first female pilot and captain in a Malaysian commercial airline. And to quote her, that today's world, the cockpit has been even renamed into a flight deck because of people like you and her that inspire the world and change the world with the women population changing. And as we can see, this is the acceptance of how the aviation as well as the mentality of other people in the world that men are not necessarily doing all the masculinity work, and
Yes.
women right now has given a I would say top representation.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I
Yeah.
really like that. And that just goes to show you one of the things that I often talk about to my clients and when I'm doing conferences is that it's all about how we reframe things, right? Because we need to have a growth mindset in order to evolve ourselves, in order to change as the environment around us changes. And so it's about being able to stand up on that surfboard and ride the waves rather than let the waves crash down upon you. So,
Yep.
a simple word change of cockpit to flight deck that already is empowering more women to be maybe gravitate towards that as a potential career rather than thinking, oh, that's a man's role.
Correct, correct. And we understand that nowadays more and more airlines are even promoting things like an all female crew and and stuff like that. This is
Yes.
great to hear that these are the initiatives that the industry is taking as a step forward. Uh, Moving on next, we'd like to know how can these initiatives keep driving their objectives and goals effectively based on your view?
I think the best way for any of these initiatives to really gain traction is to be consistent. Continue hosting regular interviews. I know that you have a podcast as well, so continue to develop
Yeah.
content there, and then look at how you can target young women and the young girls, right? So, what are the social platforms that they're using? How do you get into schools? Maybe join some of the career fairs at local schools, high schools, and universities,
Mhm.
and really help drive the message. But consistency is really the key with anything to be successful. But you want to make sure that you're not only getting in front of the potential young girls and women that will be joining the industry, but also in front of the leaders, the change makers, and the decision makers. Start
Mm.
to lobby and get buy in from organizations so that they can help share your news on their platforms. You can use their logos, and their strong brand power, their community base to help demonstrate the support that the industry around you has.
Right, that would be very good advice. And seeing that our audiences would like to know that there are some fun facts that you probably want to share with us, such as anything that you can tell us. We know that places like, for example, India has one of the highest pilot population and stuff like that. Would you have any other fun facts that you can share with us?
Well, I didn't prepare any because that
Hmm.
was not something that we
Okay.
spoke about prior. So I don't have
Hmm.
anything in terms of statistics. But what
Hmm.
I will say is that from a women's leadership board,
Hmm.
we have seen an increase, but it's not been significant enough to really demonstrate um, having or to accurately represent women in the workforce. So there are more women in aviation, but they're still not yet at that C-suite level. But we are affecting change. We are seeing a transition, and that's great. But we just need to make sure that women show up and that they feel confidence when they're
Hmm.
going to these different industries. And I'm not just talking about aviation, but any industry that in the historical times has been considered a male role. So for example,
Correct.
medicine as well, right? So there's
Yes.
there's a lot of different areas where, if it's something that you're passionate about, my advice to young women is to study hard, network, and leverage the people around you so that you can, follow your dreams and your passion. And it may not be your main role, it may not be your main job, and that's okay. If it's a passion project or a hobby on the side, it will still give you the energy to keep going. And then you never know what kind of opportunities will come across your desk.
Yeah, I believe that it's about changing mindsets, right? Just
Yes.
like how the Saudi countries, when they once did not allow women to drive, And
Correct.
we even have women now flying down there, touching down. So
Yeah.
they've started to change and give them driver's license. I
And
guess you're right.
sometimes, what that means is we need to have the courage to stand up.
Champion it.
And
Yeah.
and we need to know that we belong. So for all the young women out there, you do belong at the table. Your voice is important. And so don't
Mm.
be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask that difficult question, because these are the kinds of conversations that we really need to be having.
Okay. We know you're a busy woman trying to run your own business, but what do you like to do when you're not working?
Well, I do work quite a lot, but some of my top things just involve anything that I can do to unplug, so that when I do go
Mm-hmm.
back to work, I can
Mm-hmm.
be focused and I can be fresh and creative.
Mm-hmm.
So sleep is actually very important. Sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
take naps. That's my recovery time. I do
Mm.
yoga, but a lot of times when I'm just, pottering around the house and doing errands and, cleaning up around the place, then I'll put on a podcast. And so I
Ah.
listen to several different, business leaders, both in aviation and entrepreneurs, and, just learn from other people's experiences. And there was one
Mm-hmm.
that I came across recently. It was called the time principle. And so I've kind of modified it for me to make it more suitable. But what the acronym stands for is T would be to be thankful. So not just living an attitude of gratitude and being grateful for what you have or thankful for what you
I
have, but practicing saying thank you to people. Thanking your parents or thanking your friend for taking the time to come and see you, and actually verbalizing that or writing it down in a letter, because that makes it more tangible and that really helps reinforce the feeling.
mm,
The I stands for inspire and be inspired. So not only do you want to inspire others by the actions that you're taking, but you want to look for people that inspire you. And you can also use that as a guiding compass, if you will. So for example, if it's like the phrase, what would Sarah do? So if or what would Brandon do? What would Raja Charmaine do? So if anyone around you in your circle, doesn't have to be a famous person, but if someone around you inspires you, then you can kind of use that as a lens to look at a situation. The M stands for meditation or mindfulness. And so this is a daily practice that I have. I practice both, and they are different things. There's many, many different methods out there. So for anyone that's, interested and wants to learn more, they can of course contact me to see what method works best for them. And then E, explore. So staying curious, because by exploring and learning, you will build your experience, both of what you can do and your capabilities, and you will also build your experience of what you like and what you don't like. Both are incredibly important.
I see. I actually noticed you have a guitar behind you. Do you still play music?
I do occasionally. I have not made it a priority recently, because with the launch of,
Mm-hmm.
I actually have two businesses, and my
Mm.
hands in a few different things with the association work that I do and supporting a family business. So I haven't made it a priority recently. So I've not been playing, but you might notice I have a lot of books behind me as well
Yes.
as a record. So this device here is a record player. And so I love to listen to
Ah,
vinyls. I love to read. Again, that's my way of exploring when I can't travel somewhere.
I see. So we would like to let your fans know more a little bit about you. Do you do stuff like extreme or adventurous stuff? Rock climbing perhaps?
Yes, no, I do a lot of hiking in Hong Kong. We were very blessed to have beautiful trails around
Correct.
the city, even very close to my home. I've got a nice little green escape from the city. But
Ah,
I like to do sports a lot. So I go to the gym 5 times a week. And this year I started learning how to do back handsprings and backflips with a gymnastics coach.
wow.
So yeah, I like to challenge myself, and that might be mentally, physically, intellectually. So
Mm.
that's how I keep myself agile.
Wow, for somebody that is. But given the opportunity, would there be any other shocking things that you would like to try, like paragliding or bungee jumping? Anything challenging?
I've done skydiving before, and I would
Mm-hmm.
definitely love to do that again. But I'm always up for trying new things. And
Mm.
so, I also have a phrase that if it's something that scares you, then you should pursue it.
Ah,
So, even if maybe it might be an irrational fear, but you pursue why is it something that scares you? And you really dive deep into that so you can understand yourself better, because at the end of the day, knowing who you are and having that awareness will
Hmm.
really help you in personal life and in business.
Wow, there you have it, ladies. Listening to one Iron Lady isn't easy. So, do you cook as well or something?
Yes, I love to cook. I'm
Mm.
a budding home chef. They don't look as beautiful as some of the presentations you might see on Instagram and blogs and things like that, but I've been told that it is quite tasty.
Lucky for us, we'll be hoping to get that opportunity to try it. And do
Yes.
you bake as well or something like that?
I do, but not as much because I'm too tempted by having cookies and candy around. So if
Hmm.
I'm going to bake something, it's to share with other people. So maybe if I'm going to a potluck dinner or something of that nature.
Cookies. That means it's time for you to exchange recipes with Mindy then.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Okay, this is going to be a very challenging question to ask you. Have you been facing any discriminations or stuff like that to say that this is a non-gender equality stuff?
That's a very interesting question because, of course, women in general face
Hmm.
discrimination in the workplace, whether it's,
Correct.
direct or it's implicit and
Yes.
implied through behavior and tone of voice and that type of thing. So I wouldn't say that I've been immune. I've definitely been subjugated to, condescending tone or, being labeled a certain term that begins with a B because I've been a
Ooh.
very direct in my approach. But if a man were
Mm.
to have that approach, it would just be, he's a go-getter, and that's to be expected. So, it's about reframing again. So I'm a very tenacious person, and when I set my
Hmm.
eyes on a goal and I have my heart in it fully, then I don't let things stand in my way. Now, of course, that's not to say I might not get knocked down or sometimes feel a little bit insecure and just, oh, that really sucked, that experience, but I pick myself back up, and that's what's important. I choose to keep going forward. So the glass ceiling is not something that I've really recognized, because by not recognizing it and not giving it attention, I can then direct my energy on driving things forward and having a conducive conversation with everybody around me.
I see. And what do you suggest that these women do if they face a similar thing? How do they break this glass ceiling?
I think it's really hard to say without, having gone through it before. So time and experience, of course, are going to be your best allies. But,
Hmm.
finding a mentor is one of the most important things you can do. And that's not just when you're young or as a young woman, but in general. I myself have a mentor. I have a coach that I work with. So, finding a female mentor for young women is going to be incredibly important to learn from their experiences and how did they handle those situations with respect, humility, and grace. But then also to find a male mentor and have an ally that can be someone that will support them on their journey and that will help make introductions to the correct people, the right networks that will limit that type of, toxic behavior.
Right. And lastly, any words or quotes for our future aviators?
Yes, 100%. One of the quotes that I live by, that I also got from one of my mentors a few years ago, is that the glass is always refillable. So even if you think that this is a very negative situation, or you're typically a half empty type person, or if you're on the other spectrum and you're the glass is half full type of person, it doesn't matter because it's always refillable.